Good morning. Good morning. How you guys feeling this morning? Good, really good. So I'm excited to be here. This is something that I mentioned to Roger. I speak at a lot of high schools and colleges and corporations, and the word G-O-D I'm not allowed to mention quite often. Very rarely am I able to talk about that. In fact, when it slips out sometimes, I'm looking to the side, and so this is neat. I'm grateful to be in this forum and be able to talk about my journey and God and the impact that it's had in my life and why I'm here today. So I want to start out with a question, and the question is for you, and it's, what does the life of your dreams look like? And I want you to think about that for a second. I believe it's kind of sad that the majority of our society is settling in their lives for a lot less than they really want. Whether it's a lot less love, or a lot less energy, or a lot less health, or a lot less success, or a lot less money. They're settling for some level of mediocrity for the majority of people. And when I was 19 years old, I started in sales. Have you ever heard of Cutco before? Raise your hand if you've heard of Cutco. So I was one of Cutco's top sales reps at 19. And I was really introduced to the concept of positive thinking and of living to your full potential. And I started really striving to be the best that I could be so that I could then live as an example for all of the people around me, my friends, my family, everyone that I impacted, so that it inspired them to be the best that they could be. And so this question, what does the life of your dreams look like? I really want, we've got 40 minutes together. I want you to think about that today. I want you to think, what am I settling for? In what area of my life am I settling for less than I really want to have, to be, or to do in any given area? And my hope is that by the end of the message today, that you're ready to tap into your potential, you're ready to tap into the unlimited potential, the God-given potential that all of us have, and finally close the gap between where you are in any or every area of your life and where you truly, in your heart of hearts, want to be and know that you could be and maybe you should be. Now, when I was 15 years old, this was my dream. I was a disc jockey at local high school dances. I grew up in Northern California. I started DJing local school dances. Anybody sitting here? No. Okay. So I started DJing local school dances, and my dream was to be on the radio. And I just did the 8th grade, junior high school dances, and not a lot of money in that, by the way. I had a tip cup out, and that was it. And surprisingly, 7th and 8th graders don't have a lot of money, right? So I ended up with like 38 cents by the end of a 3-hour DJ session. And but I thought, I want to be on the radio. I want to be, like a nationally syndicated radio disc jockey. Who's the most popular today? Casey Kasem. For you older folks, Casey Kasem. Right. Well, what's his name? Ryan Seacrest. There you go. It's like Ryan Seacrest, right? Yeah, exactly. Who's that? But I didn't think it would happen. Keep in mind, I'm 15 years old when this is going on, when I'm DJing all the school dances. And I'm thinking to myself, maybe like after college, I could be on a radio. Well, I get a phone call from the local radio station manager where I grew up in Oakhurst, California. Do you know where Oakhurst is? Right in Yosemite? Few people. Very small town, but I get a call from the radio station manager, and he has one of those radio voices. You know what I'm talking about? He says, Hal, hey, how you doing? This is Larry Gamble down here at the radio station. I hear that you are like the DJ man around town, and we want to have a high school student host a radio show on a weekly basis. Would you be up for coming down and interviewing for that position? Yes, that's my dream. I'm trying to hold back being, Of course, I go down, I interview, I get the job. He says, you're hired, you're going to do 3 hours every Thursday. You'll give away concert tickets, you'll take calls, you'll take requests, you'll play whatever kind of music you want. Which, by the way, we were only on for a year and not asked back. That's another story. But as I'm leaving, I'm pumped up and I'm leaving the radio station. And he goes, oh, Hal, one more thing. Make sure you think of a cool DJ name before you come on the air next Thursday. Because radio DJs always have cool nicknames. So think of what yours is going to be. And I say, okay, and I leave, and I'm thinking, what the heck am I going to call my cool DJ name? What's that going to be? And I'm stressed out all week trying to think, and I'm thinking Hip Hop Hal, or, I don't know what to call myself. And 2 days before my on the air, how many days?
2 days.
2 days. I'm in the car, 15 years old, mom's driving, and I'm fidgeting. 2 days till the radio show. I don't have a name figured out. And she looks over. Mom can tell something's wrong. Can't mom always tell something's wrong? She goes, sweetie, what are you stressed out over there about? You look so tense. What are you thinking about? I said, Mom, the radio show's in 2 days, and I don't have a cool DJ name figured out, and you guys named me Hal. That's like the dorkiest name ever. I said, sweetie, you're named after your grandfather. Hal's not a dorky name. I'll help you think of a cool DJ name. Okay, Mom, this should be good. What's your idea for a cool DJ name? She goes, well, just rhyme it with Hal. Be Hal, my pal. Or your pal Hal. Or, ooh, she goes, I know, make it cool. Be yo, pal Hal. I said, Mom, you're such a dork. I am never going to be yo, pal Hal. And I think this next slide teaches us 2 lessons. Number 1, Mom is always right. Yes or yes? And number 2, and this is the lesson that really applies to the next, the time that we have together here today. And it's always be open-minded to the perspective of other people. I think often we're very closed-minded. I don't know if it's just our society. I travel the country, but not the world. So I don't know if in other countries they're more open-minded. But I think in America, we kind of think that we have it all figured out, right? And often, and I know for me, I'm a little older than I look, but I still look relatively young, and I'm younger than some of you. And people look and go, what's this kid going to teach me, right? So my encouragement is just, I'm no dorkier or less dorky than my mom is, but be open-minded, because you never know when the perspective of another person could share, that they share could change your life. And that's my mission today, is to add something of value to your life so that you leave today and you're better off than when you came in today. So if you're with me and you're ready to get started, say amen. Amen. Question for you again. Does everything happen for a reason? Raise your hand if you've heard this before, right? Or if you've said this before. Usually you hear this from someone that's older and wiser, right? And it's when you're going through a difficult time. Right, usually it's you're going through some hard times, and someone puts their hand on your shoulder and says, "Don't worry, I know you can't see it now, but everything happens for a reason. You'll see." Right? And what do you think? You're like, "Shut up!" Right? Like, I don't want to hear that right now. So here's my belief through my experience, is that everything does happen for a reason, but God gives us the responsibility to choose the reason. It's up to us to choose reasons that either empower us or discourage us, right? And you meet a lot of people that are going through challenges right now. I won't even ask you to raise your hand if you're going through challenges, because if you're a human being, you're going through challenges, right? It's a given. But you meet so many people that they're going through challenges, and the same challenge can happen to 2 different people. And you ask person 1, why did this happen to you? And the reasons that they've chosen are, bad things always happen to me. And, I don't know what's happened to God in my life. He's disappeared from me, right? They've always got these victim reasons. And you meet somebody else at the exact same challenge. They're going through it. You say, well, why did this happen to you? And they say, you know what? I don't know, but it hasn't killed me, so it's going to make me stronger. Yes. And I find that it's a blessing in disguise. I'm going to learn from this. I'm going to be stronger, and I'm going to come out better on the other side. Right? So the exact same thing can happen to 2 different people, but the reasons that we choose really determine the quality and the direction of our life at any given time. Right. I'm going to share with you 2 rock bottoms today, for me personally. 2 rock bottoms. And when I say a rock bottom, it's a time in your life that we've all been through where you feel like life can't get any worse. When you're in junior high or high school, it's when you get broken up with the first time, right? Or if you're me, the second or third time, right? But you get broken up and you're like, you feel like your world is ending. So for me, I've been through what I call 2 rock bottoms, and I'll say that I've been fortunate to go through the 2 rock bottoms that I'll share with you today, because it's who I became by harnessing the strength and the power of God, and through the power of prayer, and through tapping into my potential to overcome the challenges, right, that we all have, that allowed me to become the person that I am today. This is me at 19, when I was actually 20. I still have brain damage, by the way, so I missed some facts up. But at 20 years old, I was driving home from a meeting when I was hit head-on by a drunk driver at 70 miles an hour. My car then spun off of the drunk driver into oncoming traffic, and the car behind me hit me in the door at 70 miles an hour. So imagine, everybody look to your left and imagine, put your hands up on the steering wheel, look to your left and imagine a car going 70 miles an hour runs into your door. Instantly, the left side of my body was completely devastated. And this is the part, I'm going to tell you guys the injuries that I sustained. So if you're squeamish, this is the part where you want to plug your ears for 30 seconds, close your eyes. I'm actually going to tell you what occurred in the impact of the crash. Actually, you don't have to close your eyes, though. I'm not going to get naked and show you. I don't know why I said that. Just tune out for a second. All right. So I broke my arm. My arm broke in half, and one half came out behind my elbow. I severed the radial nerve in my left arm. The bones in my elbow were crushed and eventually rebuilt in metal. My pelvis was smashed between the center console and broke 3 separate times. My femur, right, the biggest bone in the human body, snapped in half, and one half came out the side of my leg. My ear was almost completely severed, hanging on by about 1/2 inch. And the ceiling came down, and it fractured the top of my skull, and the bones that support my left eye were completely crushed. Again, this is rebuilt in metal plates. So, needless to say, my body was absolutely devastated and unable to withstand the pain. I think God set us up with this mechanism where He allows your body to shut down and go into a state of coma. And so I fell into a coma almost instantly. I have no memory of those few minutes that occurred. And my best friend Jeremy was a minute behind me on the freeway. And Jeremy came upon the scene of the accident. It was 11:30 at night. There weren't very many cars on the road. He came on the scene of the accident, and he saw the car, but he didn't know that was my car. He thought, oh my gosh, there's been a horrible accident. Look at that car. It's mangled. And then he realized, oh my God, that's Hal's car. He got out, he ran to the car, and he checked my pulse. And I was alive. My heart was still beating, but I wasn't responsive in a coma. This is what Jeremy saw looking down into my car from the top. That's where you can see where my femur was, there was no room for it to stay together. You could see where my pelvis pushed the center console over, and that's where I was sitting. That's the inside and the impact of the car. So when they got there, they couldn't get me out of the car. I was completely trapped in the car. The metal was holding me in. And it took the paramedics an hour, 50 minutes really, almost an hour, to use the jaws of life and cut me out of the car. But I was bleeding for that entire time. And when they finally were able to pull me out of the car and remove the wreckage enough to pull me from the damage, they found that I had lost so much blood that I died. My heart, in the midst of them pulling me out of the car, I was clinically dead. And my heart stopped beating, and I stopped breathing. And I was immediately taken onto the helicopter, the medevac unit, and where they started performing CPR. They hooked me up to the defibrillator, tried to shock me back to life, and 3 minutes went by, and I was still dead. 4 minutes went by, and I wasn't breathing. And somewhere between the 5th and the 6th minute, thanks to the glory of God, my heart started to beat again. And miraculously, and I always say, thank God they didn't give up after 5 minutes. Well, it's been 5 minutes, he's not making it, And now I can laugh about it. Now I can laugh about the whole experience. But, and for me, I look back, when you have challenges, we can either accept them and laugh at them, or you just accept them and just embrace them and go, you know what, these are my challenges. I was reading a biography of a very successful person, I can't remember his name, who went through a really difficult time in his life, and he said he finally got to the point where he was $110,000 in debt, and he finally said, you know what, I'm just going to laugh at how unbelievably unsuccessful I am right now. How incredibly difficult, I can't even believe, how the hell did I get myself into this mess? He goes, at that moment it was freeing. Right? Because I had been crying for months. And I had been contemplating suicide for months. See, remember, we can't control what happens to us at all times, but we can control how we respond to it. And so if we can't change it, we might as well just go, I can't change it. I'm going to make the best of it. I'm going to become stronger throughout it. So they revived me and they took me to the hospital. This is what my mom and dad found when they got to the hospital 2 hours later. And I really believe my mom and dad had the worst of this. I was in a coma. And now that I have children, I've got a 3.5-year-old daughter and an 8-month-old son. And the thought of finding your child in this situation, I just can't even imagine. So I had 11 broken bones, permanent brain damage, 6 days in a coma. And when I came out of the coma 6 days later, you can imagine, or maybe you can, it's hard to imagine, but it was terrifying. And I didn't understand why I was in a hospital, why I was hooked up to machines, and what had happened to me, why I was in so much pain, why my head was bandaged, and my arm was bandaged, and my leg was in a sling. And Mom and Dad explained what happened to me, but the problem was I had suffered such significant brain damage that my short-term memory was almost completely wiped out. So I would fall asleep and wake back up, and I didn't know that I had been awake an hour earlier. And my parents had to relive the nightmare of me reliving the nightmare of finding out what happened to me over and over and over and over again. And again, that's why I say my mom and dad had it worse than I did. They had the worst of it. Back up a little bit. So, I was faced with the choice that we're all faced with, which is how are we going to respond to the challenges in our lives? The adversity in our life. How are we going to respond? And as you can imagine, this was unimaginable adversity for me. You never imagine you're going to wake up and find out you might never walk again, as the doctors were telling me, that you've broken all these bones, that you have permanent brain damage, all of these things. It was hard to imagine. And I had all of those victim thoughts. Like, why did this happen to me? I don't deserve this. I'm a good person. I had thoughts of being angry at the drunk driver, thinking, how could he do this to me? Why would he make such a stupid decision? But I'll tell you, those quickly subsided. And I remembered something that I learned in my sales training when I sold Cutco. It's called the 5-minute rule. How many minutes? 5 minutes. And I'll tell you, I learned this in a much more mild context, which is my manager said, hey, you're going to have bad days when you go out there and you try to sell something. You're going to have people that reject you, and you're going to set a goal and you're not going to hit the goal. And sometimes people even be rude to you, or kick you out of their house or whatever. It's not always easy. He said you've got to live by the 5-minute rule, which says it's okay to be negative or feel sorry for yourself, but not for more than 5 minutes. He said set the timer on your watch, on your phone, whatever you got to do, bitch, curse, moan, vent, get it out of your system. But he said after 5 minutes, you focus 100% of your energy off of the thing that you can no longer change. Which, by the way, is everything that's ever happened to us, right? We can't go backwards. We can change everything moving forward, but we can't change the past. And so he said you accept it unconditionally and focus all of your energy not on the thing that you can't change, but 100% on what is in your immediate control, where you want to go, and what you need to do, the steps to get there. And I'll tell you, I didn't realize it at the time, but it was the most powerful lesson that I've ever learned, because I was able to go, okay, it's been and it took me a few days, but I basically realized there's no point in being upset over this anymore. There's no point in wishing it didn't happen, because guess what? It did. I'd rather deal with reality than in fantasy. That's the only way to move past our challenges and to be happy in the midst of the challenges that we face. Whether they're relationship challenges or money challenges, it doesn't matter. And so after a couple days, I became the happiest patient at the hospital. And I was laughing and joking, and the doctors thought there was something wrong with me. They thought I was in denial. And believe it or not, they actually called my mother and father in one day. So my neurologist and my physician called my mom and dad in. And they said, Mr. and Mrs. Elrod, we're concerned with Hal. We don't want to worry you, but we believe he's in denial. And this is relatively normal for someone that's been through something as horrific as he's been through, to not be able to accept that this horrible thing has happened to you, that you might never walk again, that you just can't even fathom it. So what people will do is they flip the switch inside where they start distracting themselves with TV and with friends and with food and anything that they can to not have to really face the pain of what happened to them. And they said whenever we're around Hal, he's always laughing and joking and smiling and making us laugh, and that's not normal. They said what's normal for an accident victim, and they talked about like the phases that people go through in grieving and all of that, and that, it's normal for him to be depressed, to be sad, to be angry, to be fearful. They said, so we want you, his mom and dad, whichever one of you has a better, relationship or feels like you should have this conversation, go find out how he's really feeling. Go talk to him and see if you can get him to just, get him to cry, get him to admit how he's feeling, get him to face the challenges and the way that they're going to impact him. And so obviously my mom and dad were very concerned, and my dad came in that night, and unbeknownst to me this conversation had happened. I didn't know that they'd had this conversation with the doctors. And I'm laying in my hospital bed, and yeah, so I obviously it was after that. But I had been out of the coma for about 5 days at this point. I was in a coma for 6 days. I'd been out for 5, didn't know if I would walk again. And I'm laying in my hospital bed, and I've got the TV on, and my dad comes in one evening, and he sits down next to me, and I could just tell just this energy, the look on his face. Something was on his mind. And he said, Hal, can you turn off the TV for a second? I said, yeah, Dad. What's going on? Am I dying? Am I going to die? You know? Always me to make a joke, right? And he said, no, Hal, you're doing great. The doctors say you're making great progress. You're doing great. But they do have one concern. He said, they're concerned that you might be in denial. I thought, what are you talking about? You know, denial. He said, well, how are you feeling about this? He said, how are you feeling about the accident? Are you feeling sad or depressed, or are you angry with the drunk driver? God knows your mom and I want to kill him. He said, but it's normal to feel those things, and it's okay. I think you should just, feel them and talk about them. And I could tell he was really concerned. So rather than respond with a joke, I decided to really contemplate his questions. Am I sad? Am I depressed? Am I angry? I said, Dad, I thought you knew me better than that. I said, I live by the 5-minute rule. It's been like 2 weeks. I said, I'm past my 5 minutes. I can't change this. So why add feeling bad about it into the equation? I'd rather be the happiest person ever trying to learn how to walk again and getting through this than the most miserable person learning how to walk again. Either way, I can't change what I can't change. But I can choose how I respond to it. And he said, he kind of was taken aback, and he pried a little deeper. He said, are you sure that's how you really feel? Are you? I said, yes. Stop bugging me. I said, Dad, everything happens for a reason, and I always wanted to be a motivational speaker, but I didn't have anything to really talk about. I was like, I wouldn't ask for this to be how it went, but maybe that's why. I said, I've thought about writing a book before. I said, maybe that's why. Maybe there's a purpose for me to get through this as best as I can so I can empower other people to overcome their challenges. Now, granted, that was the nature of the conversation. I probably wasn't nearly as articulate as I'm laying in the hospital bed with brain damage. But that's what I told my dad, and my dad went back to the doctors and he said, hey, I talked to Hal and I really believe him. He's accepted it. He realized he can't change it, so there's no point in feeling bad about it. And I started, after I left the hospital, I started contemplating, really thinking about this whole thing, and the doctors had encouraged me to write a book, but I'm not a writer. For 6 years I tried to start writing my first book, and I think in 6 years I had like 4 pages, literally, because I would write a little bit, and then I would hate it, and I would erase it, and then I would start over. But the one thing that I took with me, probably the greatest lesson that I took with me, was acceptance. It was that the cause of all of our emotional pain, think about this. Every negative emotion that you are feeling in your life right now, or that you felt at any time in your life and at any age, is a result of our non-acceptance of something that we can't change. In other words, it's our wishing and wanting that something were different that can't be different in this moment. Maybe it can tomorrow, or it can if we take steps to change it, or maybe it's something from the past that can never be different. There are people that were, as children, endured hard times, had difficult childhoods, and I feel for those people, but they're still suffering, and it's not happening anymore because they don't feel like it's fair that thing's happened to them in the past. And what I realized is that, and then what the doctors found out is that I wasn't in denial. They thought I was happy because it was this facade that I was faking, only being happy because I didn't want to be sad. And what they didn't realize is it was the opposite. They thought I was in denial because I couldn't accept it, and that's why I was supposedly appearing happy. It was that I was genuinely happy because I had learned that acceptance was the key. That everything in our life that we can't change, by accepting it, we let go of the pain. And by the way, an important distinction, when you accept the things you can't change, it doesn't mean you're happy about them. See, I wasn't happy that I was in a car accident. I wasn't happy, oh yeah, I'm really happy that I'm, yeah. No, not at all. But I could be happy for everything else. And see, when you accept everything that you can't change, there's a place in between happiness and sadness, which are really emotions, right? Think about it. You could be feeling happy and get bad news, and now you're feeling sad. So in between happiness and sadness is peace. And see, peace is ever present. It's rooted. It's never ending. When you live in a state of unconditional acceptance where you accept the things that you can't change and you change the things that you can, But it begins with accepting all things as they are, not wishing anything were different, that you can't make different. Now, if there's something in your life that you want to change, by all means, change it. Right? This isn't a disempowering, you can't change anything, so just accept it all and just passively go through life. No, not at all. But it's really being clear on, if you're feeling a negative emotion, realize that I'm wishing I could change this thing that I can't change. And by the way, this is true in relationships. Anybody ever feel emotional pain wishing you could change someone as opposed to something? Right? And again, how do you transcend that negativity in a relationship or that stress? You accept unconditionally that other person as they are. You stop creating emotional pain for yourself and for them in the relationship by wishing that you could change something that is as it is. And again, it doesn't mean you can't work on it to improve it, but it means you get clear on accepting the things you can't change. So that was the greatest lesson that I learned. And I made this, I genuinely made this wristband. It says, can't change it. Because I was, even after I learned this lesson, when I left the hospital, I still hated traffic. Anybody, raise your hand if you're not a big fan of traffic. Okay, I'm going to change that. For the next 2 minutes is maybe why you came here today. Okay, so I would be, come with me. Let's get in the car with me. Okay, get in the car with me, and let's say we just left the house late. Okay, we just left the house late. Anybody ever leave the house late, right? And then you hit cars going much slower than you would like them to be going, right? And now you're stressed out about what time. You know, I'm going to be late. There's a consequence. I'm going to get in trouble. Someone's going to be upset. Whatever it is, right? So think about this. We're driving and we're going, oh, why did we leave late? It was your fault, your fault. You guys are always late, right? Right? We're creating emotional pain over the time we left the house. Let me ask you a question. Does putting energy into wishing we had left the house earlier change the time we left the house that day? No, but does it create stress for us? Yeah. And then we hit traffic and go, oh, you're so slow. Come on, people, right? And we're wishing they would go faster to the point where we're thinking, maybe if I get close to their bumper, the energy will push them forward, right? Now let me ask you a question. Does wishing that the traffic was going faster change the speed of the traffic? But does it create stress and emotional pain for you? Yeah. And then we're projecting into a future that we're worrying about. We're creating emotional pain in the form of worry. It's like, oh, my boss is going to be so mad. He may or he may not. She may or she may not. The point is, why wish you could change or put energy into wishing something were different that may or may not even happen? And so we go through life on a daily basis wishing we could change things, from major things, from things that happen in our life, to minor things like the speed of traffic. We go through life putting energy into wishing we could change things we can't, and creating emotional pain. And those three words, can't change it. Now when I'm in the car, I go, oh, why did I leave the house late again? Oh, these cars, I'm going to be... Oh yeah, can't change it. Why would I get upset over something I can't change? Raise your hand if you consider yourself an intelligent human being. So now that you have this awareness, right? Next time you find yourself, name a negative emotion. Somebody name a negative emotion. Fear. Angry, anxious. Fear. Next time you find yourself angry, anxious, regretful, you name a negative emotion, go, what am I resisting right now? What am I not accepting? What am I wishing were different that can't be different, that's causing me this emotional pain? Maybe it's your bank account balance, right? If you can't change it, just focus on making it better, but you don't have to feel stressed. And by the way, raise your hand if this sounds easier said than done. Honestly, and it is. You know, I really believe that God blessed me in so many ways. Like when people go, how were you able to do that so fast in the hospital? I don't know. I believe I'm a messenger. I don't know. I don't know how I was able to do it so quickly. Even now sometimes it's challenging for me to do it as quickly, but who I was when the accident happened to me and everything that had led up until that point, all the people that God had brought into my life, everything, I really believe I was in the exact position, like the 5-minute rule. If I hadn't learned that, who knows if I'd be standing in front of you today? Who knows? Who knows? So, never let the fears, insecurities, and limiting beliefs of others limit what's possible for you. And I say that because the doctor said I would never walk again. And I said, I beg to differ. I will walk again. And I will put everything that I can into learning to walk again. I really believe in the mind-body connection. I believe in the power of prayer. There were prayer circles going. You ever get one of those email forwards that says, pray for this person, right? Or some of you are like, I send out a dozen of those a day, right? Right? I was in a lot of those. There was a lot of prayer, and I really believe there's no way to explain it. Here's what happened. The doctors ran me for some x-rays. They said I was probably never going to walk again. Ran me for some x-rays. They came in, sat me down with my parents, and they said, Hal, we want to go over your x-rays. They said, Hal, we don't know how to explain this. This was 3 weeks after the accident. 3 weeks after my femur broke in half, my pelvis broke in 3 places, after they said I'd never walk again. 3 weeks later, they said, we don't know how to explain this, but your body is healing at such a miraculous rate that we're going to let you take your first step today. It went from never to 3 weeks. You know? And again, I always say, I don't have any graphs to show you like, you know, here's how much prayer was occurring, and here's how my bones were healing, right? I can't show you that, right? You know, you got to go on faith. But 3 weeks later, this picture was taken. And then 6 weeks later, I left the hospital. And I went back to work at Cutco because that's where I found my, you know, like I was at my best when I was working hard and working towards goals. And the year that started with me in the hospital finished with me as the number 6 rep in Cutco out of 50,000 active sales reps. Number 6, with half of that year without a car. My mom and dad had to drive me to my appointments. Yeah. And yes, I use sympathy a little bit to probably make a sale or two here or there. Oops. So here's the 3 lessons that I learned. Accept all things that you can't change. And again, whether it's traffic, and by the way, I got an email that put me in tears. It was actually last summer. I was speaking for an audience in Canada for a bunch of college students. And this girl emailed me about a week or 2 later, and it was a picture of her wrist tattooed with "can't change it." And at first I went, wow, this girl's fanatical like that, you know, that's pretty intense, you know. I mean, hopefully it's temporary. It wasn't temporary, it was permanent. But then when I read her email, I was so touched. She said, Hal, yesterday was the 10-year anniversary of my father's death. He died far too young, and this was a girl in college. He died at like 42, I think. And she said, for the last 10 years, I've mourned his death and been in pain over it every single day. Not a day goes by that I don't wish he were still here. And when you shared the philosophy of accepting the things we can't change and the can't change it philosophy, she said, you made me aware that I didn't have to suffer anymore. That wishing he were still here was just causing me to feel pain because he's not here. And I had to come to peace with where he is. And she said, so those 3 words, can't change it, just in the last week alone have completely, ironically, can't change it, has completely changed my life. And so on the 10-year anniversary of his death, I got them tattooed into my wrist as a permanent reminder that I'll never feel pain over my father's death. I'll only think of him with loving memories, and I'll feel gratitude for who he is and who he was in my life and the impact that he had on me. And when I got that email, I was so touched. And by the way, that's when I started doing the can't change it wristbands. I thought, you know, there should be another option that's not so permanent. But I just realized, you know, everything from losing one of, if not the most important person in your life, to everyday traffic, that we can be free from negative emotions, right? And it's the power that God gave us to accept all the things that we can't change. The second lesson that I learned in my accident was to be grateful for everything. I really believe that the amount of gratitude that we are present to in our life, I mean consciously present to with our heart, not with our head. Intellectually, if I asked you, are you grateful for things in your life? You'd go, yeah. You'd answer up here. Yeah, I'm grateful for my family and my job and yada, 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 right? There's a difference between that and really feeling gratitude for all that we have in our life. And everybody, if you think about this, we all have 2 pages to focus on. 1 page lists everything we have to feel bad about. 1 page lists everything we have to feel good about and be grateful for. I believe that your quality of life, how happy you are, has very little to do with which page is longer and everything to do with which page you live on. Right? So if you focus on the bad, we feel bad. You focus on the good and you focus on what you have to be grateful for and you're grateful. By the way, you know, raise your hand if you know anybody that complains a lot. Right? And if you're not raising your hand, it's you, by the way. So, right? But you think about that. Do you know anyone that complains and they defend it by saying, I'm not negative, I'm just realistic? Some of you are like, oh crap, I say that all the time. BS. Here's my response to someone that says that. They go, I'm not negative, I'm just being realistic. You go, really? How is it any more realistic for them to talk about, think about, dwell on, and focus on all of the negative things in their life and make that their reality? How is that even an ounce more realistic than for you and I to, from now on, focus on all the things we have to be grateful for? Talk about them, think about them, dwell on them, journal them, write them down, right? Shout them from the rooftops. Because both are equally realistic. But which one you focus on determines how you feel about your life. And I try to remind myself every day, I have affirmations I read in the morning, reminding myself that I have everything within me to be the happiest person on the planet right now. And that's true for every single one of us, no matter what your situation is. We just have to be present to that reality and be grateful for all that we have. And then finally, create progress towards your dreams and never give up. Whatever you want to do, create progress towards your dreams. Never give up. One day at a time, one step at a time. I wanted to be an author, but guess what? I suck at writing. In high school, I couldn't get an essay done. Now I got to do a 150-page book. Are you kidding me? One page at a time. One day at a time. Create progress towards the life of your dreams. And I think most people, they look at their dreams, the things they really want to do, and they're so big or so far away from where they are now that they think they just dismiss the whole idea. But they don't realize that one day at a time, one step at a time towards your dreams, and eventually where will you arrive? Arrive at your dreams, right? All right, I've got 5 more minutes. We're going to go through this last part, which is, in my opinion, life-changing. So my second rock bottom was surprisingly worse than the first. And it happened 9 years later. Now you'd imagine, what's worse than dying? What's worse than being dead and told you never walk again? Well, here's the deal. When I was in that situation, I had the most important thing that I believe human beings need, which is God's love and the love of our friends and our family. I was loved like crazy. And I had people taking care of me. The love was present. It was always there. People were always taking care of me and encouraging me. My family never left my side. I had doctors, nurses. They were feeding me. 9 years later, I didn't have any of that. Nobody was feeding me, right? I had to feed myself. And 2008 hit. Anybody else suffer or know anyone that suffered a little bit of an economic challenge in 2008? So at that time, I was very successful by most people's standards. I just bought my first house. I was engaged. Life was amazing. And then the economy crashed. Half of my coaching clients, that was my job at that time as life coach, half my coaching clients said, Hal, our clients aren't paying us. We can't afford to pay you. And my income was cut in half. And within literally a matter of months, I was broke. I was losing money every month. I ended up $50,000 in credit card debt. For the first time in my life, I was completely depressed to where I didn't want to get out of bed in the morning, and even thoughts of suicide were going through my head. I don't think I would have ever done it, but I now know what someone who either commits suicide or I know how they feel. I know when you just feel like they're just feeling hopeless. And I lost my first home. And as a result of all of that adversity that was out of my control, and not having people every day to say, hey, it's okay, it's gonna. In fact, I couldn't tell anyone. Not that I couldn't, but I didn't tell anyone because I was a life coach. I was a success coach. My identity was I can help you be successful in your life. And now my life was falling apart. I was a wreck. I was a wreck. So I called a friend. He said, Hal, are you exercising? I said, I can barely get out of bed. Not exercising, not at all. He said, you got to go for a run. I said, I hate running. He said, Hal, if you keep doing everything you're doing, you'll keep getting what you've been getting. But if you can get your butt out the door every morning and go for a run and think about solutions to your problems rather than your problems and dwelling on them, sitting on the couch, he said, get the blood going to your brain and the oxygen to your brain. You'll think clearer. You'll make better decisions. I thought, I got nothing to lose. Nothing to lose. So I tied up my basketball shoes, my Air Jordans. I literally was not a runner. Tied up my Air Jordans, grabbed my iPod, went out the door, listened to a self-help audio wanting to hear something from Jim Rohn. Anybody know Jim Rohn? Any Jim Rohn fans? Nice. So I wanted to hear something to inspire me and uplift me. And I hear Jim Rohn say this in my ears. And I've heard it before, but you got to hear something at the right, time. He says, your level of success in every area of your life will rarely exceed your level of personal development because success is something you attract by the person you become. And I stopped running and I realized I'm not becoming the person that I need to be to solve my problems. I'm not committing to daily personal development where I'm reading the books and learning the things that I need to learn specific to the challenges that I'm facing and how to be more successful in those areas. Right? If a marriage is failing, Increase your level of personal development by reading books on marriage, listening to audios, attending seminars, talking to married couples that are succeeding, right? And your level of personal development, if it's at a 2, your marriage will be at a 2. But if you get it up to a 4, 5, 6, 7, you'll see your marriage increase in parallel. I call this the success parallel. And it's true in your finances and your health, right? If you don't have any knowledge or personal development or education on healthy eating, you're probably not going to eat healthy. But if all of a sudden you start reading books, you're like, oh wow, I didn't know that, now I do. Now your level of personal development goes up a notch. So I realized, I literally turned around and I ran home and I thought, I've got to dedicate time every day to my personal development. Every single day, 1 hour, every day to my personal development. But the challenge was when? I could barely get through the day just struggling to pay the bills and go to work. I thought, I'm exhausted in the evening. I'm not going to do it in the evening. Plus, it's the only time I spend with my fiance. I thought the morning's the only logical time. But I'm not a morning person, right? Hated getting up in the morning worse than running. You follow? So I ran home and I wrote down the 6 practices that I had learned over the years, but I had never implemented consistently. Now I call them the lifesavers. A period every morning, 10 minutes of silence, 10 minutes of affirmations, 10 minutes of visualization, 10 minutes of exercise, 10 minutes of reading, and 10 minutes of scribing, which is a fancy word for journaling, but a J didn't fit at the end of the word savor. Thank you, Thesaurus. So I wrote these down. I thought, tomorrow morning I'm going to do all 6 of these. Joel Osteen says life begins each morning, and the next morning I found that, wow, at the end of that hour, I felt for the first time in 6 months, not depressed. I felt inspired. I felt empowered. I spent 10 minutes in prayer and meditation and silence. I went through all of those practices, and I had had the best day of my life in 6 months by 7 a.m. And I thought, this is a gift I can give myself every morning. Within 2 months, I had doubled my income. I had started running. I thought, hey, running is the thing that turned this thing around. I'm going to do that every day. I ended up running a 52-mile ultra marathon that I trained for during this time. And I had never run a mile before. And so I started calling this the miracle morning because it turned my life around so fast. And one of my coaching clients said, hey, how do you wake up in the morning? I said, oh, wait till I tell you. I do this thing that I'm calling the miracle morning, and it has completely changed my life. She said, I'm not a morning person. A week later, Hal, you were right. It was easy to get out of bed when I had that purpose, when I had that plan, when I was excited. And so, to wrap this up, a few minutes over time here, the Miracle Morning became, this was 6 years ago that I started doing the Miracle Morning, or 5 years ago. And it changed my life, and then I watched it change the lives of my coaching clients. So I put it on the web, I put it on YouTube, I put it right, and then thousands of people started watching it and emailing me. I have hundreds of emails saying, Hal, I lost weight because of the Miracle Morning. I saved my relationship because of the Miracle Morning. I cured my depression. I mean, I can't even tell you. And then I thought, I got to write a book. I have a responsibility to share this with the world. And so The Miracle Morning is my new book that just came out. It hit #1 on the bestseller list. It sold 11,000 copies in the first 4 months since it came out. And I'm not bragging, just sharing that it's doing well.